it's Patriot Mom007. Yeah, we're on the whole time. I'll cut all that out. We're going to cut all that out. Yeah, we had a little conversation before the conversation, and I'm here with Michelle Ugenti-Rita at her home. She has graciously offered to let me come here to interview you today because I am without a studio right now for a while, so I'm being creative, and we want to catch up with her. I recently met her at a Patriot Connection meeting we had in the North Valley last month. She was one of our speakers and was featured. I had not really heard from her specifically about really how she feels about anything. I've heard a lot about her, some of it not accurate when you meet her. So I thought it was really important that we catch up. Primaries are around the corner, July 30th, and we have a lot of work to do here in Arizona, a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. So thank you for having me at your house.
You. This is a pleasure.
Really appreciate it. So you are running for the Board of Supervisors, Maricopa County.
Yes.
One of the seats that's opening. We have a couple who are not moving forward, Bill Gates.
Mr. Hickman and Bill Gates.
And Clint Hickman are not going to run again, which we're glad for. And we really need to get strong candidates in there. So I know previously, just a little background for those who don't know you. Right. Michelle is a native Arizonan, and so she has a large stake in what happens in our state. Plus, she's raising 3 children here. She has a husband, and one of her kids' name's Noel. Yeah. So I'm now partial to that, very coincidentally. So she has worked in our legislature and our Senate, actually both, for a few years. So she has a really good grasp of politics in Arizona in general. She obviously cares because it's not a glorious position in either of those houses. And I don't think the pay's awesome. So she pretty much is doing it because she wants to make our state better for her family, I imagine.
I care very much. You know, I don't think you could serve for 12 years and still be at it if you didn't. You know, it's my community too. And I care about how Arizona's treated and the direction that our state's going to take over the next several decades. I mean, the Southwest is still growing. We're a new state. Right. And it's a battle for conservatism, for our democracy, and honestly, it's kind of like ground zero here in Arizona.
Right, and just getting into the Board of Supervisors because, you know, we want to hear from you specifically on that. I noted to you, our pre-conversation was that you had served on the House and Senate in several committees, a lot of committees, but they really leaned towards the appropriations, ways and means, budgeting, finance, and we know from going to the Board of Supervisors that they are spending money, like I said, they have a tree of money in the backyard that we don't know about, but they do, because they're spending literally millions every meeting. They're stamping millions of dollars through.
Well, they're a rubber stamp for, they're a pass-through. They get federal money. They take no real initiative in caring about how this money is spent, particularly with, and most relevant, the COVID money at $200 million.
Right.
That to date, it's probably more in all honesty, that they got from the federal government, and they are spending it on every single pet project imaginable. So for everyone who's feeling crushed because of inflation, I would just ask that you pause and say, how do you get there? It's reckless, out of control, almost immoral level spending. And that's also how they control you, you know, by controlling how much discretionary income you have, by controlling what your choices are. And it's all done with the purse strings. But I want to set the tone too that, you know, we have a board and they're all up, and it's a 5-member board, and this is District 2. So we've got Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, Rio Verde, and I am taking on an incumbent, an appointed incumbent. Well, he was appointed and then he won the last election. But he got there because of an appointment, because he toes the line. To your point, he spends how he's told to spend by his handlers, by the establishment. He doesn't ask questions. You've been to the meetings.
Yes.
I mean, where's the dialogue? Where's staff having to defend what's going on? Yeah. Where is input from the other stakeholders?
Right.
It's all done behind the scenes, and it's rubber stamp after rubber stamp.
You know who they have in the room now, if you haven't been down there lately, is now that they built their little they built a wall there, you know?
Yeah, they took the public out.
Yeah, so the walls work, apparently. When they need them to. It's interesting that they built the wall, but they did have legal staff sitting at the front of that wall at the last meeting there to consult, which I hadn't seen before. Maybe I hadn't noticed. Maybe they were in the room, but they were all lined up in the front, and they were asking questions when people would bring things to them at the podium, then they would defer and legal would step in.
Right, because Thomas Galvin, and that is who I am challenging, and a New York appointee who nobody knew about until he got there. They're afraid of you. They're afraid to answer your questions directly. They would never do this. They would never have you in their home, sit down and talk to you candidly about, you know, their votes, their vision, their record. They have attorneys there as a cover because that way they can default and just point to staff, point to the attorneys, and take the attention off themselves. They don't have the guts to do what their constituency wants them to do, because they are bought and paid for. I mean, that's what we are up against. I really want to convey that if we don't take over the Board of Supervisors, if conservatives do not take over the Board of Supervisors, true conservatives, you know, this, like, you can be registered as a Republican and that's all. That can't be anymore.
Right.
You know, your
integrity has to come along with your registration.
You have to demonstrate that you're a Republican.
Actions speak louder than words. And when I see them, 4 Republicans, so-called, and a Democrat on the Board of Supervisors, yet they all vote together, how can they be even from a different party? Because fiscally conservative Republicans would never vote the opposite way, which is what I see happening when I go down to those meetings.
It's a love fest. They can't compliment each other, you know, enough, and they all vote in lockstep because that's how they protect themselves. For your viewers, if some of them are wondering, like, how come I don't know this? Well, that's because there is a concerted effort by the media to cover for them and to provide them with as little exposure as possible. Because if anybody knew how reckless they behaved, and how really what they are, Democrat enablers, then we would all be outraged and we wouldn't have the problems that we have. But they've skated by. They're infamous at this point. Their reputation has been tarnished. That needs to be handled, and I will do that when I get there. But they have gotten away with reckless spending, running our elections into the ground, you know, drowning our businesses in regulation, crippling them with closures under COVID, the pandemic.
And now they're doing green, everything.
And so
which is out of control.
That's exactly right.
They're doing 15-minute cities here in Arizona. If people don't know that, they already started converting us. Arizona is not really a 15-minute city. You can't really walk around Arizona, even if you're close to other things. It's just not feasible June, July, August, September for the majority or a lot of the population who is of the age 65 plus, which is a large group here in Arizona. Even in the summertime, not everybody's a snowbird. And when I heard that was happening already, thank God I live in the country. That's all I can think is thank God I live near Cave Creek. Is, oh my gosh, those poor people who live in the city, like they can't stop it. It's already happening.
Brought to you again by the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. They're a part of some quasi-governmental entities called, and a part called MAG, and they implement a lot of this this green agenda through there, and they take a lot of transportation dollars that have strings attached. But the reality is they're not going to change their behavior. And we could spend hours talking about the egregious actions that the board has taken, not just in the last year or two, I'm talking like the last several decades, culminating with just how reckless they've been, particularly with spending in the elections. But they are not going to change unless we change it. We have to change who sits on the board. The Democrats are salivating right now. They have all the statewides. They have 1 seat. They're just behind 1 seat in both chambers. When I was there, we had super majorities. It can be done.
Yes, of course it can be.
We do not have to accept hanging on by a thread.
Exactly.
And I don't accept that. Not only do we need to be keeping our majorities, and we need to be growing them. That should be like, our goal. But when they get that board, and they kind of have it because they've got Republicans that capitulate to Katie Hobbs and Adrian Fontes and Chris Mays. But when they get D's, straight up Democrats on there, it's over. It is over for Arizona.
It's frightening for all of us who know what's happening. And for those who don't know what's happening, I would say you need to really research your state, your cities, your counties. Everything's online. I mean, Google is our tool as well as their tool, and we need to use it for our own good and our own knowledge and educate ourselves. And then you need to get involved, or you need to go to meetings, which I just recently found out about this year. You need to speak up, which I started doing at the podium every other weekend. It's not fun. It's not really even fruitful.
It's impactful, though.
But it is a record of our pros and cons of what we want as people and voters in Arizona. And it's important we get things on the record, and so that we can build a case against people who aren't doing our bidding, what we hired them for.
President's former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleading guilty today to lying to the FBI.
Flynn knew exactly how the system worked. He knew exactly what the intel world had been up to. He understood its funding. They had to get rid of Flynn.
There was a moment where I just felt like I was drowning. And so I'm in there with these other political appointees. They're all supposed to go in there and tell what they believe to be the truth. What they did was they took my assessment and they wanted me to change it. And I was like, I'm not changing it.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
President Obama said, but I do have one specific recommendation. Stay away from Michael Flynn. He's bad news.
Over time, instead of being pounded down below the surface of the ocean, we started to fight. I'm now above the surface.
If we lose freedom here, there is no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.